transmisión. Ahí a los que estén viendo, bueno, estamos transmitiendo en vivo. Saúl, te voy a mandar. Saúl, ¿cómo le hago para no irme en el YouTube? ¿Me salgo? Saúl, ¿me salgo? Gaby, ¿me salgo de YouTube? O sea, cierro la página y me salgo para no irnos, para no irme.
Sí, tienes que salir.
Okay. Okay. O sea, cierro la página.
O simplemente quítale el audio al video de YouTube.
Ok. Bueno, ya me salí. Espero que siga transmitiéndose. Ahorita,
Sí.
Saúl, si lo puedes checar.
Sí, aquí dice que se está transmitiendo.
Ok. Voy a empezar a aceptar gente, ¿ok?
Sí, me voy al canal del inglés.
Ok.
Hola a todos. Gusto en verlos. Ay.
Samuel
Sandoval.
¿Por qué me haces esto, Samuel Sandoval Solís? Ya estamos los que estamos. I'm going to, before we do the welcome, everyone, please make sure, remember that this is a translated event, English and Spanish. Make sure you select, I'm going to the English channel now. Make sure you select the interpretation icon on the bottom of your screen and select the language of your preference, and then select mute original audio so you can just hear the language of your preference. Please follow those steps so you can hear properly what we are supposed to be saying in your language of preference. And if everyone is ready, guys, I'm going to go ahead and start. We are live streaming in YouTube. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you, everyone, again after 2 months or 3 months almost of strategic planning of the forum itself. So we are reloaded and we are super excited to start this new semester with a high-level panel that we're going to talk about something very important, very popular, very sensitive as well. And there's a lot of questions out there in the community. So the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters is very excited to have you all, our guests today, our audience. Please make sure that you select the language of your preference on the bottom of your screen. These are our social media channels that you can follow. We are thankful, of course, of our sponsors, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, Arizona Water Resources Research Center, California Water Resources Institute, Texas Water Resources Institute, North American Development Bank, and many others. We have news coming forward to the members of the forum. You will receive newsletters. We have been attracting research projects to the forum. We are expanding the network, and we're also expanding the services of our network. But we're investing a lot on the Binational Institute and a lot on our research projects in the border. We just received a grant to work on Baja California to monitor water quality on the coast. We also are working on transboundary aquifers between Coahuila and Texas, and also recharge zones on the San Juan Basin around Monterrey. So this is just getting bigger. It's just getting very exciting and very attractive to all of us. So anyway,
Rosario,
yes.
Before we continue, we need to make some co-hosts, please.
Okay, let me do that. Where is Sam? Okay. You should be good.
Gracias, Rosario.
See, Sam? Are you good? Okay. Okay, so the topic for today, and I'm just going to introduce the first two. Desalination is the solution to our border water crisis. We're going to try to answer that question today here. And with us, we are very pleased and very honored to have these extremely great panelists. I'm going to start with Adriana. Go ahead, Gabby. Adriana, she's assistant professor at University of Arizona. She has a background in architecture and expertise in neighborhood design and environmental sciences. She studies human landscape interactions in human environments and works with stakeholders in community to answer questions related to water security, public health, urban resilience, and environmental justice. She has published over 50 peer-reviewed publications. She has presented her research in more than 70 public presentations in many countries. And her work has attracted attention of the media, and she has been featured in 20 or so media outlets. She has received over 15 awards and distinctions, including 2018 Best Paper Award for Water International. Thank you, Adriana, for being with us today. Next, we have Professor Margaret Wilder. Wilder, did I pronounce it right? Wilder, yes. Margaret is a human environment geographer and political ecologist jointly appointed in the School of Geography and Development and the Center for Latin American Studies. Her main research interests are in critical water governance, transboundary climate vulnerability and adaptation, water equity and security, and water and climate justice. You must be pretty busy right now. She primarily works in the interior of Mexico and the US, Mexico border region, the southwestern US, and have interest in Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, and Panama as well. Thank you, Margaret, for being with us today. And I'm gonna leave the floor now to Sam, who just joined. Sam, you wanna take over and introduce?
Welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos. Really a true pleasure introduce Nicolás Pineda. Nicolás has a political science and public administration degree from UNAM, a master of public arts and studies from University of Kent and Canterbury, and a PhD from UT Austin, Hock'em Horns. Yep. So Nicolás, thanks for being here. He's a full-time professor in the public administration program at the Universidad de Sonora, la Unison, deputy director of the State Center for Municipal Studies of the government in Sonora. Anyways, Nicolás, thanks for being here with us. And the next one will be Nélida. Nélida, good seeing you again. I know we have crossed our paths quite a lot on the Rio Grande, Chihuahua, Coahuila. Anyways, Nélida, good water warrior, Rio Grande warrior. Holds a biologist degree from UNAM with a master's degree in environmental sciences and technology from the Center for Research in Advanced Materials and a PhD in natural resources de la Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua. More than 18 years in professional work. I can testify that, been there with her. Currently the executive director of the Intercultural Center for Studies for the Study of Deserts and Oceans, LACEDO, binational organization for more than 42 years. Yeah, she's an excellent conservation warrior, naturalist, and of course, always good seeing you again, Nélida. Bienvenida.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Samuel. We're going to go backwards. Samuel, he's Associate Director of the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters. He's Associate Professor of UC Davis. He's responsible for the Water Management and Policy Research Program at the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources Division. He works on strategies to improve water management for anthropogenic and environmental requirements by developing reservoir reoperation policies to improve the human and environmental water requirements. Thank you, Sam, for hosting this event with me.
No, al contrario. Thanks everyone. Rosario, the director of the Permanent Forum, very well-known academic, making the bridge between diplomacy, water science, transboundary issues of water. She's the PI of the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Act program, and that integrates research between data on transboundary aquifers between Texas. And now we have a couple of research projects. So let's go to the panel.
Okay, let's go. Sam, do you want me to start with the first question? Are you guys ready? Okay, if you can come closer to your microphone, Sam, will be great. Okay, first question, and let's see where this goes. Okay, I hope everyone has his coffee right now or its favorite drink, and we can start the discussion. And here we go. What is your perspective on current desalination projects, ongoing or proposed, as the solution of our water scarcity conditions on the US border region? What are those desalination projects? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Let's just go straight forward with the main question. What is your perspective? And each of you will have 3 minutes. You should be able to unmute yourself. Who wants to start? Adriana, you want to go first?
Sure, why not? Yeah, so since I'm the first one, I think it's pertinent to kind of go over, well, what is desalination? A little bit, just some sort of background, and I'm gonna share my screen really fast for 2 slides that I'm gonna be showing. So desalination is this process of taking water from the sea. There's some fish intake that may happen, so some environmental issues here. The pre-treatment system, but then the main thing happens here in these membranes. Reverse osmosis is the main treatment. It uses a lot of energy, so it's expensive. And then a key factor is also a brine that is disposed, concentrated seawater disposal, which is discharged into the sea or ocean. Then post-treatment, storage, and delivery. So that background, the desalination in this side of the border, in the Arizona, Baja California, Sonora, there are several proposed and already built plants. So Carlsbad is kind of the biggest, most iconic, the biggest on the Western Hemisphere, is already functioning, providing water for people there and in San Diego. There's another in Los Cabos, small scale, very small, treating water, already functioning for tourism. And there are some proposed plans, some Guaymas, I believe is already underway, Empalme, and La Paz as well, also small scale. And then there's a lot of talk about Puerto Peñasco or Rocky Point to deliver water to Arizona or even Nevada, Rosarito to San Diego, and another proposed one in Ensenada. So with that context, on desalination, this is a hard path approach, right? This is a big infrastructure system to augment water supply, but as any other hard path approach, like dams or interbasin transfers, there are some externalities. Not everyone does well. There's people who are left without water in case of interbasin transfers or downstream communities for dams. And the environment, like a river without water, for example. So those hard path approaches, the experts say need to be following or need to follow soft path approaches or even combine with soft path approaches like demand management. Let's use less water metering, repairing the aging infrastructure so we fix the leaks that are, we're losing water there, water reuse, water efficiency. So comparable to other hard path approaches, desalination also has externalities. I've talked about the cost and the environment as well. So I would ask 3 questions to what is the scale of the project? If it's a small or large scale, it has a lot of consequence. What is the location of the plant, whether it's in Mexico or the US, because Mexico, we have problems with water metering. Not everyone pays for the water. There's no funds to operate, the damage of the infrastructure, the leaks, all that. And also the maritime ecosystems, whether it's in an enclosed bay like the Sea of Cortez, or whether it's in an open ocean like the Pacific Ocean. It has a lot of different consequences for the externalities. And who's managing the plant? Who takes care of the costs? Is it subsidized and all that? That would be the 3rd question. So in sum, the advantages, yes, we will have more water for some people, and that translates to economic growth for sure. But the disadvantages is that it's very, very expensive. 7 times more expensive than regular water. Environmental impacts, definitely, there's a lot. Energy intensive use, and growth in arid regions, it's debatable because growing, it means more infrastructure, less open space, less habitat, and very unsustainable in the long term. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Adriana. Who wants to? Okay, Margaret, go ahead.
Thank you, Rosario. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So I want to thank both Rosario and Samuel for the invitation to be on this distinguished panel. And Rosario posed the question about what our perspective is overall sort of on desalination, binational desalination. And I want to point out that my expertise is really pretty focused on the Rio Colorado, on the Arizona and Sonora border. That's where I've done a lot of my work. I've also done quite a bit. I know quite a bit about the California corridor, not so much about the Texas and east of here. So my comments are largely focused on Puerto Peñasco, some of the plans that have been proposed for there. And I've been writing on this since about 2009, doing research in Puerto Peñasco on binational desalination. So in answer to your question, I don't think that desalination is a solution to the US-Mexico border water issues. In fact, I'm not even convinced it should be part of the toolkit that is the preferred term now that water policy professionals like to claim. And I have 3 main points that I'd like to make. One is the environmental impacts. The injection of the damaging briny discharge into the Sea of Cortez, upper Gulf of California waters that are near the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, which Jacques Cousteau called something like the jewel of the world. This is going to potentially have impacts on the health and safety of marine animals in the Sea of Cortez and upper Gulf. And this includes endangered species. It is also going to likely have visual and environmental impacts on the land. Second point, unsustainable growth. Adriana already touched on this. The discourse for binational desalination is that of a drought-proof supply of water or a limitless supply of water. And I think in our arid desert regions, those are very dangerous terms to be throwing around kind of loosely. This discourse could potentially open the floodgates to unsustainable growth in our region and can promote and facilitate rapid growth both on the coast of Puerto Peñasco, but also much removed in Phoenix and Tucson, because what's holding back growth to a certain extent, and currently both in Sonora and Arizona, literally, is a lack of water, of assured water supply. Once that tap gets turned on and it's seen as limitless, that also is going to create pressure for growth because there will no longer presumably be those water limits. The third point I have, and this really isn't probably so much for me to make the point, although he trabajado en México toda la vida. I've been working in Mexico doing research since I was about 20 years old. My third point, though, is what's in it for Mexico. I really don't see what's in it for Mexico. And this is partly thanks to, in large part, to a stimulating column by Nicolás Pineda, who's also on our panel and good friend and colleague. The governor of Sonora, after Nicolás published one of his articles on the proposal in El Imparcial, the governor of Sonora came out denouncing the proposal that had been made by the Israeli firm IDE for developing a desal plant on the coast of Sonora. And so I understand the governor's response, and I applaud his skepticism about it. The proposal has the potential to amplify and magnify the political and economic power imbalances between the two countries. Mexico potentially could become a maquiladora de agua, basically a water factory for Southern Arizona's water. And Mexico is taking on a lot of the risk, a lot of the physical risk, while apparently benefiting comparatively little from the plant on its land. And so I think that one can question the proposal not only from Mexico's point of view, but also from the perspective as Arizona water users, where millions of water users in the US Southwest for the first time will become potentially reliant on a water supply that is actually located in a different sovereign country. So this raises potentially issues of physical security of the conveyance systems, the ecological security of the plant and the water produced, as well as the fragile lands of the Pinacate and Organ Pipe monuments where it will traverse across, and national security and relations between the two countries. Last two comments there, I think there's been a lack of public transparency, and there's currently a lack of clarity about the two governors' positions, by which I mean Arizona and Sonora, about really where do the governors come down on this binational desalination proposal at this point in time. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. That was pretty straightforward. Nélida or Nicolás, who wants to take over now?
I would like to do it because many of us, thank you. So I am here now as a director of the Intercultural Center for the Studies of Desert and Oceans. And for us, it is very important to highlight that we are a unique collaboration between Mexican and US non-for-profit. So my perspective will be showing as the borderland people. We are the borderlanders. And what we try to do is really offer realistic environmental and community-based solution that recognize, respects, leverage.
Anyone on the English channel is listening? Can you listen the translation? No? Okay, just give me a second.
The cultural, socioeconomic, and biological interconnections between
Bueno, Nélida.
Mexico and the US. Sí, claro.
Nélida, ¿me escuchas?
Sí, ¿me oyes?
Oye, fíjate que para el traductor, no se estás tú escuchando la traducción en inglés. Entonces,
No,
si no, ahorita regresamos. Tú no te preocupes, Nélida, tú estás bien en el canal de español. Contigo no hay nada
Estoy
para
en el audio original.
No,
¿Podemos
ponte,
empezar
ponte
de
en
nuevo?
el inglés. Ponte en el inglés, por favor. Ahí.
I am.
¿Sí?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Gracias.
no, sorry. So hope you hear what I said, that it's like, you know, at CIDO as a binational organization, we really try to offer realistic environmental and community-based solution that recognize, respect, and leverage the cultural, socioeconomic, and biological interconnections between the US and Mexico. We are a very good example of the borderlands, the borderlands collaboration. So by going back into the first question, that it is our desalination programs is the solution for the scarcity. I absolutely agree with Maggie, with Peggy saying, no, that is not the solution from our problems. And what I want to highlight is first, the lack of information. I've been consulted by many international media or academic institutions about the problem that we are going to face with this big announcement on the desalination plant that it is proposed to be built in Puerto Peñasco to supply water to Phoenix, Arizona. And what I can say is nobody here in Mexico talks about it. So there is a need of access to information from not just the political or decision-making people, but the real people. So by talking with the people, everybody says, why you are expecting to export water to the US when we already have a water scarcity problem. So we need to solve our problem first. And I'm not going to jump into legal frameworks and the complexity of exporting water from a country to another. So this is just talking from environment and people that I'm speaking of. So access to information. And secondly, I really want to state that we CIDO are not against infrastructure, but what we really believe is in early stage planning and make a strategic environmental impact assessment. So instead of trying to make a remedy for a problem, let's face the problem before it is there. And that brings me to the third statement, that there are high ecosystem risk talking about the plant in Puerto Peñasco. Nobody can think about, the gradients of temperature, salinity that an enclosed water like the Gulf of California or the Sea of Cortez is going to face about that. And during this conversation, I will show you the potential effects that we can be facing. So my discussions will be very focused on the local people and the environmental concerns that we will be facing in the short time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nélida. Nicolás.
Quiero agradecer primeramente pues a Rosario, a Samuel y en general al Foro de Aguas Binacionales por permitirme participar en este panel. Yo estoy en el lado mexicano, yo trabajo, bueno, igual que Nélida, estoy en Sonora, en Hermosillo, Sonora, y bueno, es un tema muy importante para México y en especial para Sonora. Para dar mi respuesta voy a tratar de compartir, a ver si es posible. A ver, no sé, ¿se ve mi pantalla o no?
No, todavía no.
Bueno, no sé si...
Not yet.
Not yet, thanks. Parece que no me deja. Bueno, tratando de contestar la pregunta, me voy a referir exclusivamente al proyecto de planta desalinizadora en Puerto Peñasco para exportar agua desalada a Arizona y a los Estados Unidos desde el Golfo de California o Mar de Cortés. Y específicamente me quiero referir a la reunión que hubo del Water Infrastructure Financing Agency o la WIFA y la proposal o la propuesta que hizo IDE Technologies, la empresa encargada de este proyecto, y la propuesta que hizo el 20 de diciembre del 2022. Quiero enfatizar algunos aspectos que ya mencionaron las compañeras que me antecedieron. Este proyecto no toma en cuenta el impacto ambiental ni los costos. Incluso no toma en cuenta ni considera el apoyo o la aprobación o no incluye a México como parte del procedimiento. Este proyecto ha tenido grandes avances y ha sido ya incluso financiado en el estado de Arizona y ha hecho mucho énfasis sobre los beneficios que este va a traer para Arizona por lo menos en la propuesta que presentó la empresa IDE Technologies, es muy enfática en los grandes beneficios que va a traer para Arizona, pero nunca considera los costos ni el impacto ambiental que este proyecto tiene para México y en específico para el Alto Golfo de California o Mar de Cortés. Entonces, reitero lo que ya mencionó Nélida, Margaret Wilder y Adriana Zuñiga, en el sentido de que aquí hay algo que falta. Primero, no se habla ni de los costos para México ni del impacto ambiental. Y bueno, los impactos ambientales son múltiples, es tanto del agua que se extrae como del agua de la salmuera que se desecha, ¿no? Además del inmenso o gran cantidad de costo que hay en consumo de energía, ¿no? Entonces, primeramente, este proyecto se ha avanzado bastante sin tomar en cuenta en México, ¿no? Y bueno, también otro punto sería que la desalinización es la última después de otras alternativas. Yo considero que primero debe de hacerse la perspectiva debe de ser el manejo de la demanda o la conservación del recurso. Y también algo que se ha venido promoviendo bastante, que es la adaptación al cambio climático. Entonces, creo yo que esta sería una de las primeras alternativas y también avanzar en la economía circular y en el tratamiento y reuso de las aguas, de todo tipo de aguas, ¿no? Hay experimentos muy interesantes como el de la Biosphere 2 o de la Biosfera 2 que está en el norte de Tucson, de cómo se puede reciclar el agua. Bueno, eso mismo hay que aplicarlo en el mismo Arizona, ¿no? De reusar el agua. Y entonces habría que tratar de ver cómo habría un aumento de las fuentes de agua y creo que se requiere mayor planeación, ¿no? En esos dos puntos yo resumiría mi respuesta a la primera pregunta, ¿no? Hay grandes faltas de información en las cuales México ha estado ausente. Se maneja implícitamente o pareciera que todo está ya acordado, que ya existe el apoyo de México, cuando en México no se ha hablado nada de eso. Y tampoco hay estudios claros, no conocemos ningún estudio de impacto ambiental o de lo que significaría esto para el Golfo de California. En eso resumiría yo la respuesta a la primera pregunta. Gracias.
Things are getting quite animated here. I really like the position or that everyone is bringing, and I think so many of you have talked. Nicolás talks the kind of not the buy-in, so that I mean technically it's kind of okay, but they haven't been talking with the local people, the local communities, a lot of the externalities, right? So that is something, the externalities of the environment, the externalities of the society. I mean, the argument of growing more in a desert. So, I mean, with all of this, so let me go back on. So what is the role of desalinization in the binational agenda? If it has a role or not? We know that, for instance, it's already very, very long put in there in 323 that go and look at these reports. And in these reports, it actually comes everything about desalination. And what are the potential implications at a social, political, environmental level? What are we missing? So I don't know who wants to start with this. What is the role in the agenda? What are we missing?
I jump in. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, tú. Está bien.
Dale, Nélida.
Gracias. So what is, what are the implications so far for me, even with all my diplomacy training, what I'm thinking, this is go in a very, very early stage. It is more like the idea of somebody who thinks that can provide a solution for a growing demand, but the social, the political and environmental impacts are not stated under this project. What do you mean when bringing more water to a growing city in a desert, as you mentioned? We don't want to bring more water into the desert. Secondly, there is a huge fuel dependence on energy for these desalination projects with high emissions of greenhouses emissions. So we are contributing from the climate change. We are already living in a planet that it is changing, the temperature is increasing, you know, the environmental flows or the flows from the Rio Colorado into the Gulf of California are decreasing or are limited. So there are many adverse circumstances. Just to think about the binational agenda. I've been talking about how it was supposed to give a solution. Should we give a solution? And my first and truly and sincerely answer will be, if we want to have a solution, we need to collaborate. And this is being a one-direction conversation. And this is not a binational or international collaboration at all. So talking about social, do you bring more water to have more pools, or do you want to be more efficient and more wise in the use of the water that you already have? We want people that be aware that the water is there, but we need to take care about the water. What about the political implications? From one side, as Nicolás mentioned, you know, the state governor manifest about he do not support this project. But this project hasn't yet arrived into the Senate or the CONAGUA or the new, you know, the legal framework who has to overseeing this project. So again, this is a one direction political proposal. And talk about environment. Environment is like nature has the solution for all the societal challenges. And that means increasing salinity in the Sea of Cortez will impact the 80% of the fishery production of Mexico because everything is captured. 80% of the fish production comes from the Gulf of California. The estuaries, the coastal ecosystems are the nurseries of those species. And if you are talking about, you know, when you chupar el agua from these pipes, you will be decreasing and impacting not just fish, but a lot of larvae. And larvae is the first stage on the biodiversity on this species. So there are so many things that, sorry to be so negative about it, but it is great to have the opportunity to share that if you want to collaborate, if we want that this has a real solution, let's start with the basics. We need to learn how much water do we have, where the water comes from. Here in the desert where we live, we need to make visible the invisible. Almost all our water is from groundwater, and nobody relies about the big watersheds that in the north or in the south part of US, Mexico, whatever. So there is a different water balance. There are inequities. Here in Puerto Peñasco, I'm very grateful for living downtown. So I have water every day, all the day. But some of my staff don't have water every day, all the day. But we have the biggest condos and resorts where big pools and big apartments are there. So let's talk about equity. Let's talk about environmental justice. And talk about that means talk about water. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nicolás.
Gracias, Rosario. Bueno, contestando la pregunta, ¿cuál es el rol de la desalinización en la agenda binacional? por ejemplo, la minuta 323 y las implicaciones potenciales en el campo social y político, o qué es lo que falta. Yo quisiera mencionar que la propuesta presentada en Arizona es una propuesta que se sale de toda proporción. Es 1 millón de acre-pies por año. Esto significa 1,233 millones de metros cúbicos al año. Esto equivale a 10 veces la cantidad de agua que consume la ciudad de Hermosillo y que ya de por sí es muy grande. Ahora, hay que tomar en cuenta que el agua que se produce no es el agua que se extrae. Hay que multiplicarla por 3 para producir de 3 metros cúbicos de agua que se extraen al mar o al golfo, en este caso, 1 se convierte en agua desalada y 2 se desechan como salmuera, ¿no? Entonces, y yo estuve tratando de hacer comparativos de la proporción de esta planta que se está proponiendo en Puerto Peñasco, y estoy viendo que, bueno, son 1,233 millones de metros cúbicos al año, lo que se planea, así bien piensa llegarse en varias etapas, pero la planta de Carlsbad produce solamente 169 millones de metros cúbicos. Comparemos 69 con 1,233 la planta Sorek de Israel, que produce 227 millones de metros cúbicos al año. Esta está para 1,233 millones, ¿no? Entonces, yo consideraría que el abasto de agua a la ciudad de Phoenix no es un asunto fronterizo, no es un border issue y no está comprendido en los acuerdos de 1944 ni el otro que se dio, el Acuerdo de la Paz en los años 80, ¿no? Y también quisiera señalar que el Golfo de California no son aguas binacionales y que no es jurisdicción de la SILA, de la IBWC. No está dentro de las jurisdicciones administrar las aguas del Golfo de California. Entonces, yo consideraría que actualmente no está en la agenda binacional, no es un asunto que corresponda a la SILA, y el Golfo de California tampoco son aguas binacionales, ¿no? Entonces, no es un asunto que vaya a resolverse en la frontera. Yo considero que es un asunto diplomático. Es binacional, pero de alto nivel, y es en la agenda binacional a nivel Washington, Ciudad de México, pero no considero que esto haya sido planteado todavía, por lo menos al público. Sí quisiera yo reiterar que en México este asunto no se ha mencionado. La CONAGUA o la Comisión Nacional del Agua no ha dado ninguna declaración al respecto. Cuando se le ha preguntado, ha dicho que no está en la agenda. Entonces, yo eso contestaría un poco esto sobre la agenda binacional. Yo diría que si acaso el rol de la desalinización en la frontera es para las aguas subterráneas que no reúnen la calidad suficiente para ser usado, como entiendo que se hace en El Paso, o también en Yuma, donde ya para desalinizar las aguas del río Colorado, pero es otro tipo de desalinización, es una desalinización menor. Y yo quisiera mencionar una gran paradoja. Aquí hay que jugar, pues si vamos a armar un modelo, hay que jugar con todos los elementos del modelo. Y la paradoja la planteo como una pregunta. Si la desalinización no es aceptable para California, como así se vio con la planta Poseidón del Orange County, que está en el océano abierto, en mar abierto, ¿por qué sí se considera que es aceptable para el Golfo de California o Mar de Cortés, que es un mar prácticamente encerrado y muy lejano al mar abierto, ¿no? Esa es la gran paradoja de por qué algo que no se consideró aceptable en el condado de Orange, en California, con la planta Poseidón, ¿por qué sí se considera aceptable para México, ¿no? Entonces, eso sería un poco mi respuesta. No está en la agenda binacional. Hay un rol para la desalinización, pero es un rol mucho menor. El proyecto que se ha estado planteando no ha hablado, reitero lo que dije en la primera parte, no ha hablado ni de los costos para México, ni del impacto ambiental que tendría en el Golfo de California, ¿no? Y en eso, pues, resumo mi respuesta a esta pregunta.
Gracias, Nicolás. Margaret.
Can I just
Margaret or Adriana? Go ahead, Rosario.
just quickly before Margaret takes over, I just have a quick technical question. The Puerto Peñasco plant that you're talking about, is that the one that is referred as part of Minute 323? Is this the same one? I mean, Minute 323 talks about a desalination plant in Mar de Cortés. Is this the one? Is this the same one, or this is a different separate project? It's the same one. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because I had that question. Okay.
There's a whole plan that they've done, and it has, I think, 5 to 7 different sites, all up and down the coast of Sonora, on the upper Gulf. And one of them is in Puerto Peñasco, one is at Puerto Libertad. Quite a few, I think, are in Peñasco, but at different sites. I'm sure Nélida and Nicolás know better the clear details on that. So do you want me to go ahead with the question, Rosario? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so just quickly, I totally agree with what Nélida and Nicolás just said. I think that's brilliant insights, Nicolás, that this is really a horse of a different color. This is not about SILA and IBWC and border water relations. This is about much broader, the US Southwest trying to get water from the coast of Mexico because it's too hard to get it from California, essentially. If I were Mexico, I think I might say, why aren't you looking at the coast of California? And we know there are reasons that is not happening. I wanted to point out just quickly a couple things. One is that this is not a new proposal. This is tagging a little bit on what Nélida said. True, we're sort of just hearing about this again, but Nicolás and I were involved in 2009 researching this, and the history of the proposal for Puerto Peñasco at least goes back to 1965, if not earlier, 1965. That's how long these plans just hang around on the shelf of some water policy person, and then they pull it back off, and we all go through these conversations again often. And so I think it's important to remember this is not a new proposal, but it also has staying power. It has traction, and the water policy people have not let it go. It's not like they've evaluated it and said it's not good, it should go away. In fact, it just keeps getting resurrected and brought back off the shelf for further consideration. So I think that's important. In terms of what's missing, I think what's missing is that, I think as Adriana alluded to in her very first comments, we always talk about desalinization as in technical and financial economic terms. But what really needs to happen is we need to broaden our discussion to consider social, ecological, and political parameters of these binational initiatives. So that's what's missing. And I think that we need to stop treating it as a purely technical or economic consideration and get into some of the things that we've been bringing up here today. And obviously these are messier. The engineers and the lawyers don't like these kind of wicked problems that involve people and local communities and livelihoods and so on. But those are the realities of doing this project. A second issue is who should be participating in these conversations. Right now, it's a totally closed door conversation that's happening among water policy elites, by committees designated by governors, really just by, or by the IBWC SILA. This needs to be cracked open so there's more public transparency. As Nélida alluded to, we need more information, more public information, more public airing of what this proposal really is. Nicolás has talked a lot about what the risks are for Mexico, but I would also say that someone needs to define the risks for both states in both sides of the border, but also the benefits. And I think that nobody has really tried to define what would be the benefits for Mexico beyond just water for Puerto Peñasco itself, which I believe is part of the plan. And then I think we need to discuss how to anticipate and address what the equity concerns are. As Nélida pointed out, both sides of the border are operating, and especially the Mexico side is operating in conditions of extreme water scarcity, where people actually don't have water day to day, 24/7. And so we need to be looking at, does it make sense to produce this extremely expensive stream of water that's 7 times more expensive than our normal tap water? What is that going to do to equity and to access to this water? So those are all some concerns in addition to the environmental concerns and so on that have already been raised. Thanks.
I guess it's me. It's the last one from the panelists. So I'll just jump in. I completely agree with my colleagues in the panel. I don't see a reason or a justification from any political, Mexican politician in agreeing in any option for binational desalination from Puerto Peñasco and so on. And let me just share my screen to kind of illustrate, because I have a very cool map that can illustrate this. So Puerto Peñasco is right here, and there is a marine reserve here in the upper Gulf of California, where the Vaquita Marina is. Nélida works really hard here. And there's in the land area, there's also a big land reserve. So conveying desalinated water from Puerto Peñasco into Arizona necessarily will, what happened? I don't know. Would cross these sensitive areas, a conveyance system, an aqueduct, you name it, it's bad idea. And then, doing large-scale desalination in Puerto Peñasco to transport it into Arizona for whatever reason, because I don't see a reason, it'll damage the fisheries, as Nélida pointed out, but all the livelihoods of people there, even tourism, they want to fish something, but there's nothing to fish. And so I don't see really any point in this, that the water will be very expensive. The utilities don't have funding to fix leaks. I think that goes first. Now, if they don't have funding for leaks, do you think they have funding to operate a very a sophisticated plant? So it's not only building the plant, it's maintaining the plant, operating it, which is always not part of any project, right? The O&M, operation and maintenance, is always missing. And the water in the sea is not part of the binational water. So there is really, in my opinion, no sense or no any reason why Mexico would, accept such a deal. I know in Phoenix, they are opening a semiconductor plant, a big one, and they need water for sure. I understand their need, but Phoenix is not in the borderland, but just the border is defined by 100 kilometers north and south, and Phoenix is not there. So I don't see a project like this benefiting Nogales or Lukeville, Sonoita, or Naco, or any of our really local borderland communities. Not at all. It'll just jump through them or cross them through a conveyance system and then benefit people in Phoenix. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Lots of questions in my mind. and let's go to the next one, and let's see if we can find out what are the drivers promoting desal. we know that there's a scarcity out there. We know there's potential for desal. Nicolás already mentioned, but inland desal, right? Like those projects that desal, the brackish water from groundwater, and then you treat it like El Paso is doing it. It's been successful at the modest point. And other desal plants, inland plants, not taking seawater. But this is different, right? This is different, and it has a binational element in there, even though it's not, but it is, right? Because it has impacts at the binational scale. So what are the drivers promoting these projects in the border region? Because I don't know about you, but we hear and we get emails, calls from private industry, from consultants asking about how can we help or support from the academia perspective these projects to move on. And we wonder, well, where is this push coming from? Apart from scarcity, right? It's not the first time. I know it's more dramatic this time because it's a macro scale, a worldwide scale condition, and immediately you go to the most expensive option. It seems like from what you would say, the most expensive. Why is that? Why we're not going for the cheapest? What are the drivers? And who wants to start? Nicolás, you want to? Oh, Nicolás, you want to start?
Gracias. Pues bueno, voy a tratar de contestar a la pregunta desde mi punto de vista. ¿De dónde viene esta propuesta o esta idea, iniciativa, proyecto de una gran planta desaladora en el Mar de Cortés? Los drivers. Yo considero que proviene de los intereses privados del desarrollo de la ciudad de Phoenix y de los grandes beneficios que traería para Arizona. De eso, pues creo que está bastante claro. También considero que hay aquí un rol o un papel o está en el fondo la competencia de crecimiento entre los estados de Arizona y California, que es lo que está afectando a México. Y aquí California pues tiene un comportamiento que le impide a Arizona a lo mejor tener más acceso al agua del río Colorado, ¿no? Entonces California entiendo que tiene derechos de primacía o senior rights para el río Colorado y bueno, y que por eso no le da acceso mayor a Arizona. Pero en este caso México se ve incluso siendo los dos estados de la Unión Americana, Arizona y California, a México se le ve como una tercera parte más débil, incluso que el juego entre los estados, ¿no? Entonces, México es visto económica y políticamente como una tercera parte. Entonces, se considera la solución fácil para Arizona. Y bueno, yo subrayo aquí la paradoja de se le tiene más miedo a California que a México, ¿no? Siendo que México es otro país extranjero. Y bueno, ya reitero lo que decía Margaret Wilder, de que aquí debe haber soluciones en equidad, ¿no? Pero lo que veo en el fondo es una perspectiva, por llamarle de alguna manera hegemónica, por no ya, que puedo llamar hasta incluso colonialista, de extractora de recursos, ¿no? Propia de otras épocas, ¿no? Donde los países desarrollados iban por los recursos naturales de los países en desarrollo o menos desarrollados. Así veo yo la perspectiva que se está teniendo sobre México. Ahora, quisiera también mencionar qué es lo que no se promueve o cuáles no son los drivers que está promoviendo esta desalinizadora, ¿no? Y esto es reiterar un poco lo que ya hemos veniendo, lo que se ha estado mencionando. Lo que no es un driver, aquí lo que yo diría que más bien es un obstáculo, es que la desalinización del Mar de Cortés no es una alternativa sustentable. No es algo que pueda sostenerse para las generaciones futuras de manera permanente en esas cantidades y en esos volúmenes. Muy probablemente el Mar de Cortés se deterioraría rápidamente, ¿no? Entonces, ese no es un driver, no es un elemento a favor. También, entonces, el daño ambiental del Golfo de California, ese pues impediría este proyecto, ¿no? Y también, pues ya lo mencionó la doctora Wilder, no se ve ningún beneficio para México, más bien son riesgos, amenazas y costos para México, no solamente de sus recursos naturales, sino la contaminación y y bueno, el deterioro, el daño ecológico que se le haría al Mar de Cortés, donde pues bueno, hoy en la mañana escuché a Nélida hablar de la vaquita marina en un noticiero aquí en Hermosillo, donde ya quedan solamente 13, entre 10 y 13 ejemplares, ¿no? Pues se le quiere echar más leña al fuego aquí aunque en este caso sacarle más agua al agua de que de por sí está amenazada, ¿no? Entonces, ciertamente hay drivers, pero son en beneficio de la ciudad de Phoenix o de Arizona y son a un alto costo. Y el costo no es solamente lo que ellos paguen, sino también pues el costo del medio ambiente, que no es un costo que pueda garantizarse fácilmente, ¿no? Hace poco mencionaron, no sé si me daban la palabra, aquí tengo este memorándum técnico de la 323 del acta, de la minuta 323 de la SILA. Y bueno, ellos ciertamente hacen estudios, pero estos estudios son de alternativas y no es vinculante, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que este proyecto en México no puede ser tratado a nivel local. En México tiene que ser un asunto de alto nivel. Y sí, ciertamente maneja diferentes oportunidades, se les llama, ya mencionó la doctora Wilder ahí de varias locaciones, pero son solamente estudios previos que se han hecho. No, yo siento que no es un compromiso, ¿no? De que esto ya tenga que hacerse. Y yo reitero lo que mencioné en mi primera participación, la desalinización sería la última alternativa y tendría que hacerse en un plano de cooperación equitativa entre países, no en una cosa impuesta, ¿no? Eso es mi...
Gracias, Nicolás.
I would like to go next because I need to move into my WhatsApp web in a couple of minutes. Sorry for that. But I absolutely agree with Dr. Nicolás. This is, desalinization has to be the last option. But the drivers, I was trying to think about, keywords on sharing with you. And the first one is lack of sensitivity. This is a very selfish solution for a problem that everybody is facing. And the problem that we are facing is we are a desert inhabitants, and water scarcity is a day-to-day activity for us. This is not a surprise. We decide on living in the desert. So we need to behave as desert inhabitants. And of course, this lack of this water scarcity needs solution, but the solution it is not bring more water. So if you give me the chance on sharing my screen, I want to share 3 images with you. Sorry for them. Can you see my screen now? So these are the kind of documented scientific information about the big impacts on desalinization on fish. So thinking about the different technologies, you are talking about swim bladder inflation, you are talking about suction of eggs, larvae. So there are a lot of very good academic information down there about the effects. Of course, it doesn't go only into fauna, but into flora. We talk about the brine or the high salinity effects on the flora, not just mangrove, but increasing eutrophication and increasing other species. And the last one is this. These are very, very good data that I will share with Rosario and Samuel, so if they can share these papers with you. But there are different effects that are documented in other parts of the world. So again, this is a UNESCO heritage site talking about desalinization in the Gulf of California or the Mar de Cortés. It's absolutely complex. The driver scarcity, for instance, me as a local one, I know the rumors of the big developers of condos or hotels. Of course, they want and they promote this project because the rumor says that part of the water will be here for local use. But the local use of that water will be for the hotels or the condos, not the local people. But we cannot still, having these conversations on the rumors. We need to be very serious and going to the table and start this conversation in the higher level. So let's stop let's stop develop selfish solution. Let's grow together a solution for the well-being of everybody. I know that it seems like there's a lot of water in the sea and less fresh water available. We live in a blue planet that names Earth, but needs to be named as ocean. Of course, there is a lot of opportunities for that, but this is not the solution, and there are not a single one driver that can support this idea. So I want to disconnect myself and connect in my cell phone. So if anything else needed, I will be around. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nélida. Who wants to go again, Margaret or Adriana?
Should I go, Peggy?
Adriana.
Yes, okay. Well, I very much agree with Nicolás and Nélida, what they said. The driver is economic. It's in Arizona and not the border region. It's Phoenix. It's this growth, insatiable growth. It's colonial. I love that, Nicolás. That's colonialism all over again. And for Mexico, the water problem is fixable. We have 50% loss of water through leaks. Let's fix those leaks and we have 50% more water. Or let's increase efficiency in the water use, or let's treat the wastewater and reuse that wasted or reclaimed water for many uses, like we do in Tucson. There's a lot of opportunity, demand management, green infrastructure. There's a lot of soft pad approaches that could really fix the water problem, and we don't need the hard pad large scale infrastructure for the local level, and we would not be destroying livelihoods, fisheries, ecosystems, or anything like that. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there to stop being redundant. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, just quickly, I don't really have a different perspective. I agree that with the economic analysis, I think there are two drivers, mainly climate change and how it's affecting water supply in Arizona, and growth. And I think what we need to understand is that growth is essentially the economic engine of Arizona, and has been for as long as I've lived here, and probably longer than that. Housing subdivisions. And what's happening right now is in Phoenix, there are actual orders against building more subdivisions in certain areas because of lack of assured water supply. And so the rubber is really hitting the road. There are starting to be real consequences for water use and for growth. And so there's a lot of pressure from the economic interest to look anywhere they can. I think it's basically creating a kind of scare tactic, a kind of panic about we must invest now. This was kind of the perspective of our former governor Ducey. I think, we have to do something. We need to start building a desal plant in Mexico because it's going to take 10 to 20 years to get it online. And so I would just say that the bigger the bathtub rings are in Lake Mead or Lake Powell, the more pressure there is going to be on building a desalination plant. So I think that it's pretty clear that those are the drivers. I don't think this is about, this isn't really to counter what Nélida said, but to say, I don't think this is really about binational collaboration. I don't think that's the interest here. The interest isn't to do something that benefits both sides of the border. I think the real driver is to find water supply for the US side of the border. And if Mexico can benefit, you know, or there can be a way for Mexico to benefit, then that's all to the good. Obviously, I'm not advocating that position, but I'm saying I think that's kind of a coarse reality that we're dealing with, perhaps. And you know, it's true that other countries, other arid countries like Israel have had a lot of success with desalination. And so, you know, maybe we need to keep open minds at some level, but basically, I just think it's such a, I think that this particular, as Nélida was saying, the particular place that's being proposed with UNESCO biosphere reserves with endangered species, one of the most beautiful jewels of our planet, to use this particular Sea of Cortez as the place to put a major desalination plant, just on the face of it doesn't make sense. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I mean, this conversation really kind of brings me many different pictures in my head of being in Tucson, being in Phoenix, being in Yuma, being in the Imperial, Coachella, Mexicali, and it really brings kind of that. I mean, we are connected, but at the same time, I always kind of have a couple of things there. We are putting drinking water in our toilet. So, I mean, there is ways to improve safe. And then the other one that, I mean, I kind of keep thinking of, this goes quite a lot here, right? NIMBY, not in my backyard. It can be done somewhere else, but not in my backyard. Anyway, so let's actually start. So you already have started talking about some of those. So we have, so for instance, some conservation strategies. You've been talking about also, well, what I was mentioning, the shuffling the water, priorities, agreements between the states. So the way forward, if you could see 5 to 10 years from now, I mean, does the desalination fit the overall shared water resources, or do we still have some wiggle room to work within what conditions we have right now? So anyone?
If I can jump in pretty quickly, Sam, because I saw this comment that is interesting and we might share with the audience from Gilbert. Thank you, Gilbert. Gilbert Anaya from IBWC. He says, great comments from panelists. We do need binational dialogue on water scarcity. I agree with the transition that needs to occur. Surface water conservation, wastewater reuse and use for water supply, breakage, groundwater. Bringing different sectors to help with solutions, energy in particular. And then he mentioned something that sparks my interest. IBWC did build the first diesel plant under a US-Mexico agreement, which is in minute 242. So we can do it. So it is under their jurisdiction, under their authority, in case we were doubting about it. So I guess that's the reason why minute 323 and why the diesel framework under that minute still valid and is pushing. If it's not pushing, at least it's promoting the window for this discussion. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that and bring that. Oh, Gilbert raised his hand. Gilbert, do you want to go ahead? Hold on, I have to give you. Where? Okay, you should be able. You should be able to talk now, Gilbert.
Thank you, Rosario. I just wanted to add, it was built to help.
Are you talking in English or Spanish?
In English. Let me switch over.
If you're talking in
that's
English,
okay. No, that's okay in English.
Okay, in English, make sure you select your original audio. Okay. Your English
Okay.
option, Gilbert, in your interpretation icon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Sam. I just wanted to add to my comment that the plant was
No,
built.
I cannot hear him. Oh, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
The plant was built to benefit, not only to augment the supply, it wasn't to augment the supply, it was to improve water quality for the farmers in Mexico, for irrigation and for the other uses. So if you do have dialogue between, if you have meaningful dialogue between both countries, you can work towards solutions, even if it involves non-treaty sources that like groundwater, and in this case, potentially exploring other water resources. This is something that's very important to the region, and I just offered that to say that it is possible in that type of a forum to promote this and to be more inclusive, which is what we're trying to do in those newer minutes, minute 323 and 325, to continue to explore these solutions because of the trying times that we're entering. Thank you, Rosario.
Hey, Gilbert, before you go, so one thing there. I think so it operated, but it operated for a very small amount of time, right? Because it was treated the source. I think there was a salinity source that was kind of reduced or avoided. So there was no need to operate the desalination plant, but it is there as if needed. Yeah, I think you need to, could you ask Gilbert unmute? Rosario, make him co-host, otherwise.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Sam, you're right. The main problem was irrigation return flows that were very high salinity. By removing that source, that improved water quality, so the desalination plant was not needed, but it's been on standby, and it's only been tested and used for a very short period, but it can take. Now there's groundwater in that area that can be routed to the plant, as well as additional irrigation flows that could be used to improve the water quality.
Thanks, Gilbert. Gracias. Okay, so yeah, that was an excellent comment, and also, I mean, put it in perspective. I mean, both that collaboration is needed, that sometimes alternative other solutions are also equally beneficial. So going back to the question, so what is the way forward? How, if you could see 5 to 10 years, if we have this crystal ball, now where does desalination fit? Does it fit? Does it not in the shared water future? Who wants to take it? I think, Nicolás, you were starting it.
Sí, gracias. Bueno, volviendo a la pregunta principal de este panel, si la desalinización es una solución para la frontera, en este caso y en este proyecto específico de una macro desaladora de Puerto Peñasco para exportar agua a la ciudad de Phoenix en particular, y en esas proporciones yo no le veo como la solución. Ya hemos dado diferentes tipos de argumentos. Yo veo el principal argumento de que ambientalmente no es una solución sustentable. Yo he hecho énfasis en los costos ambientales, pero también habría que ver la cuestión de infraestructura y la emisión de gases de efecto invernadero, perdón, la cuestión de la energía que se requiere, ¿no? Bueno, y yendo a la perspectiva futura, ¿no? Yo visualizo 2 escenarios. El escenario esperado, el escenario deseable es que no se haga esta planta en particular, ¿no? Podrá haber otras maneras de cooperación en otras proporciones. Creo que este proyecto comenzó mal. comenzó sin México y comenzó sin considerar el medio ambiente. Primero fueron a buscar apoyo en Israel que en México, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que este proyecto comenzó con el pie izquierdo, decimos en español, o sea, está mal planteado de inicio, ¿no? No, si eran de dos partes, hay una parte que no ha sido tomada en cuenta, ¿no? Entonces, el escenario deseable es que haya unas soluciones internas de otro tipo, ¿no? Ya mencionaba que es la última, ¿no? Ahora, hay otro escenario. El escenario es que no necesito decir el poder que tienen los Estados Unidos, el poder económico, poder militar, y la presión tan grande que ya mencionaba Margaret Wilders, que existen de los intereses económicos, y pues que digan nosotros lo que nos proponemos lo cumplimos y que obliguen de alguna manera. Yo creo que sería el otro escenario, ¿no? Sería algo muy lamentable, sería repetir, no quiero mencionar antecedentes históricos de mediados del siglo XIX, como tipo compra de Gatzen, no sé si en el mismo tenor o de otra manera, ¿no? O sea, no sé si Estados Unidos esté en ese plano, pero ese no sería un escenario deseable, ¿no? No lo es para México y creo que no toma habría que replantear la cooperación en otros términos y creo que el problema de Phoenix y el recorte de aguas del río Colorado debe de atenderse por medio de adaptación, por medio de conservación, soluciones de la naturaleza, economía circular, reuso de aguas tratadas, etcétera, ¿no? Todas estas gran variedad de cuestiones sustentables, pero no mantener, ya mencionaron ahí las albercas y los campos de golf de Phoenix o los grandes prados estilo escocés, que no son propios del desierto de Arizona ni del desierto de Sonora, ¿no? Entonces, aunque tengan el poder económico, no creo que sea la solución adecuada. Ahí plantearía yo un wrap-up, una especie de idea general. Gracias.
I can go next, and it's very, very much in agreement with what Dr. Pineda said, that I don't see binational desalination as a viable option, and for the Mexican side in particular. And I just want to add, like, we have been working with scientists and practitioners in Tucson to explore the net zero urban water model, like building within our own resources in like a closed loop, like Nicolás alluded, like a circular, whatever we use, we reuse, and then we treat and we reuse at the building scale, neighborhood scale, and even city scale to really sustain our city with the 300 millimeter of water a year that we get. And that's possible, technically possible to do that. So cities are exploring these alternative, more sustainable solutions, and while not doing interbasins or any big, large scale infrastructure like desalination. So I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Well, I think, as I said, that this proposal is not new. It's been around since at least 1965. And as much as I agree this is not the appropriate solution, I think that it will still be seen by water policy planners, certainly on the Arizona and Nevada side, as being, you know, they've shifted the language from desalination as a panacea so nobody agrees that this is the overall solution anymore, or nobody's naive enough to say that publicly. But instead, they've shifted to this more soft language that this is just another tool in the toolkit, which that sounds reassuring, right? Like this is a tool in a toolkit. That seems like a good thing. But I think, you know, for all the reasons we've outlined, it's still really problematic, particularly, I guess I just feel so strongly that particularly on that part of the Sonoran coast, that is, you know, maybe somewhere else it would make sense, but it does not make sense in that particular location, it seems. So I believe in 10 years, it will still be on the table. It hasn't gone away since 1965. I'm guessing as the bathtub brain gets bigger, and the pressure on our current water resources gets more, it will get even more, there'll be more pressure to begin investing in a desalination plant. And wonderfully, there are great people like Gilbert Anaya who are, in the fight and trying to, steer these directions. And I really appreciate that he's here today. I think that's wonderful. Listening to this conversation, largely among scholars. And one thing I want to say about conservation is that just like sustainability, water conservation is problematic as a term in a certain sense, because on the Arizona side, we already are doing so much water conservation. We have pretty efficient water use. Of course, we are still, as Samuel said, we are using drinkable water in the toilets. So that's bad. We need to re-engineer, replumb our cities. But water conservation, the concern I have is that we always talk about water conservation, but to me, the end use is often just to allow more people to move here or more industries to set up shop. So we need to have a water conservation that's truly about reinvesting in the environment or saving water in a purposive way for the people who are maybe currently living here. And I'm not saying we should pull up the drawbridge behind us, but the problem with water conservation is we're often doing it just so, at the margins, 2 or 3 more people a day can move into our communities, both in Hermosillo and in perhaps in Phoenix and Tucson. So I think the whole idea of water conservation needs to be rethought. I really love the work that Adriana is doing, where she's really on the ground with people like Brad Lancaster, who are really at the forefront of doing green infrastructure and starting to rethink how we actually plumb our cities, what our actual water infrastructure looks like. And I know there are valiant efforts. I see Paul Ganster on the call. I know for years he's been involved in the Tijuana, the efforts to do more green treatments in the Tijuana River Basin. We're all out there doing our thing and trying to shift this conversation in the right direction. But it's very difficult given the interests that are driving this. And I think we have to really find a way to have these complex conversations with the public so that people understand why it might not be a good idea just to build a desal plant. That seems like an easy solution, and we're clearly seeing that it isn't. So again, thank you, Rosario and Samuel, and enjoy being part of this conversation. I look forward to hearing what other folks say.
So we are almost to the time, and thank you.
Yes, we need to wrap up.
But I mean, there are important conversations, and I'm not sure if any one of you wants to discuss. So Karina is kind of bringing back this comment of nature-based solutions and rethinking, as you're mentioning, Margaret. I mean, totally agreed on that one. With Jerry, we were having a conversation about the agriculture intensive, water intensive. I mean, and this is not only on Arizona, right? It's Arizona, California, everywhere.
Yeah. Josh also mentioned about the inland plants that we barely touched on. But Josh, he's in El Paso, he's in UTEP, so they're pretty familiar with the big inland plant in El Paso, and he mentions inland can be different, not necessarily will be different, because they can drop the salty concentrates into deep wells. But this depends on local geology, so it's becoming complicated. Could be difficult, or it could be abused, not using a suitable method, say in Mexico. Inland plants have much less salty water, so less energy cost and less concentration, but they have fewer disposal options. That is true. Some inland water may have concentrations of toxins such as radionuclides. And inland plants are still very expensive, both in terms of public capital funding and water costs, especially for the very poor. And a lot of other comments out there. I'm glad that Zoom came up with this idea of saving the chat once the session is over, so you can always go back and go to to the comments on the chat because we have lots and we can continue the discussion.
Yeah, and I think, Rosario, one thing, so for our audience, please remember this is the forum. So if you have any given topic or any given idea for things to discuss, please do let us know. Those are always welcome. Also, thank to the panelists. I don't know, I always keep thinking about desalination. Yeah, very the last resource. It also sent the message that, yeah, expansion is okay while living within our own means. Yeah, we should not follow. So anyway, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for being here. Rosario, any other thing?
Yeah, just to take home messages for dinner if you're on your way for dinner somewhere. Probably not in the Arizona part yet, but in this side we're close. So desalination is not the panacea. It requires binational agreement with considerations to equity, definitely issues. We need to start with the letter A before getting to the X, right? Even water has its own ABC, water management. So we need to keep that in mind. And of course, it's important the communication, the effective communication, and the transparency of all these projects, because the more we face scarcity, the more the community needs to be involved and be part of the solutions. That being said, I thank you very much, the speakers, the panelists. It was great. It was great to meet again after 2 months. Thank you to the audience. Please follow us. We're going to be back next month with another hot topic, probably hot and sweet next time, not salty. Follow us on our social media. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our volunteers, to the Permanent Forum Dream Team, and see you next time. Gracias a todos.
Gracias a todos. Nos vemos.
Gracias, Adriana, Nicolás,
Muchas
Margaret.
gracias.
Gracias,
Yeah.
Rosario,
Saludos.
Sam.
Bye,
Bye,
thank you.
Nicolás. Bye, Peggy.
Nos vemos pronto, chicos. Thank you, Jerry.
Gilbert, muchas gracias. Gracias a todos.
Saludos, Sam. Nos vemos.
Gracias, Gilbert.
De nada, Rosario. Thank you. Great session.
Nélida,
Thank you.
quiero verte de nuevo.
Zaira, gracias.
Sí, Zaira, muchas gracias.
Sí, estuvo pesada la traducción.
Oye,
Should we? I need to stop the.
Ay, sí,
I don't
exactamente.
know how to stop it. Oh, there
No,
you go.
pero you need to stop the live recording. So, en
How?
YouTube, vete a los